Hey everyone, my name is Reed. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Stytch, which is an identity and access management platform founded in 2020, so working on a lot of things in identity prior to AI. With the advent of AI agents, agent identity has probably become the fastest growing element of our business. So excited to chat more about
that. I'm Jason Lopatecki, founder and CEO of Arize AI, Observability evaluation leader. We support the leading open source solutions, Phoenix, and also our AX enterprise platform. So great to have you all.
Hey everyone, I'm Charles. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Letta. We're basically a company that's focused on building stateful agents. So these are AI agents that can be run perpetually, and they kind of learn, get better over time, more similar to humans as opposed to like workflows that we run today. They kind of like eventually accumulate enough context rod, or whatever you want to call it, and derail. So yeah, previously to Letta, I was a PhD student at Berkeley with my co-founder Sarah, and there we worked on a project called MemGPT, and I think some of you probably have heard about it. It's basically one of the earlier papers that was doing long-term memory for LLMs with tool calling. It's kind of like the memory that's in ChatGPT, Gemini. It's all done with like tool calling behind the scenes, and that's basically what we're doing with the MemGPT paper. And Letta is like a continuation of that. It's basically, how do you actually get these AI systems that you can run for like decades, centuries, even like longer than human lifespans, and actually have them meaningfully learn and get better over time.
Thank you. So we're well into 2025, and the conversation has clearly shifted from the foundation models to AI agents. So from your vantage point, what is the biggest catalyst for this explosive growth?
Yeah, I think from our side, certainly MCP feels like the biggest boon for agent identity, at least from what we see. So for context, the way that we deal with agent identity is that you can think about it like there are other companies in the market like arcade.dev, which you might have heard of, where you'd use them to help build AI agents. When we deal with AI agent identity, typically we're helping customers become accessible to AI agents to interact with their application. So in order to do that, you have to become an OAuth 2 or OIDC compliant identity provider, give scopes, permissions, et cetera, to an agent. And I mentioned that because with the advent of MCP, obviously it all started local first, then you got remote MCP into the spec, and then you had Cloudflare, Vercel, et cetera, launching support for it. And in order for you to support remote MCP servers in a way where authentication is actually seamless for an end user, you probably want to use OAuth. Like you can try to do other approaches, but you're just not going to get mass adoption on it. And so for us, at least from the angle that we've seen, it feels like MCP, and in particular remote MCP, has been what's led a lot of companies to go from the theoretical, should we support AI agents or should we build something in the AI agent space, to I need to build something to be accessible within Claude or ChatGPT, and this is how I should do it. So for us, it's certainly been MCP, and in particular remote MCP.
I think we're in a unique position in that we sit across a lot of companies, from enterprises to tech-first companies, the Spotify's, the Ubers, the Bookings, Pricelines. And I just see, company after company is feeling the pressure to innovate. If they don't, they're going to be in trouble. They're feeling the possibilities of what you can actually deliver from a product perspective. So I'm seeing agent executions across a wide range of companies, from your old enterprises to large new companies, and I just think it's more like, first generation was prompt response. What you have now is more of step, kind of little more iterative approaches on data. Obviously, tool calling and kind of control flow using that is key to it. Iterating on data, and then planning, I think, is probably the new thing I see added to some of these. But I just see it as like this, every company right now is implementing this to try to innovate.
Sorry, what was the question? Like, why are the agents?
What's the single biggest catalyst for the agents' explosion?
Yeah, I'd say the single biggest catalyst for the agent explosion is probably everyone calling everything an agent. I think there's so I think naturally, like when you have brand new technology that comes out, like I think GPT-4 was an exceptional leap over GPT 3.5, for example. It naturally takes a long time for people to realize what you can actually use this for, and real software is complex. It takes a long time for it to get like properly distributed into like working apps that touch real users. So I think it makes sense that there'd be a natural progression from like chat to then maybe adjacently like workflow automation, things like N8N, they existed before ChatGPT, right? But now it's like N8N on crack because you can just like put an LM in there and everything gets much better, right? And I think agents, maybe like the biggest thing, I think MCP is really big because I think what differentiates like real agents from just agentic workflows, let's call it, is, well, firstly, autonomy. Like the AI, the intelligence has to have the ability to choose what it wants to do, as opposed to being on Rails. But I think the other big thing is that it has to be able to call tools, and the tools have to be good. And I think the tools, when prior to MCP, so I actually, like, for full caveat, I used to be like an MCP hater, but I think like prior to MCP, everyone had to write their own tools. Like the onus is on developers to write the tools. So if you want to connect to linear, you have to figure out how do I like wire up linear on my like local runtime to like linear API. I think the difference with MCP is the tools become very high quality because the kind of onus to build the MCP server goes to the developer. So now it's linear's job to create a very good MCP server. But now that those MCP servers exist, like the linear one with OAuth, becomes like much more easy to stitch that to like a very simple loop that has a very good model that can call tools. And boom, like great models, great tools, you have an agent, or like a real agent, not just like a workflow.
Yeah, I'll take a hot take, which is I don't see, MCP is used a lot and talked about a lot about here, but I don't see as much in production myself. I still feel like it's early, so that's my hot take. Almost zero I see in production.
I'm gonna follow up that later, but I have a couple tap on Charles. What you said is the term AI agent is like everywhere, right? So in your view, you guys' view, what does like a production-ready AI agents actually mean?
At some point I'll start on the other end, but I'll take this one first. Yeah, so I would say, most simply an LLM that has tool calling built in, but I think to make it production ready, I do think observability is probably the biggest thing that I would layer onto that, just because I think, obviously it could be an AI agent without that, but I think if you're actually trying to assess whether people are using it, whether people are getting value out of it, there has to be some demarcation that you're tracking around what are people using it for, and then is the objective actually being handled by that LLM that's making those tool calls.
But was this the age-old question of what's an agent? Is that
It's production ready.
What is a production ready agent?
Yeah.
Ideally, it's something that works well. First off, I think of an agent again as like something where the LM's deciding some control flow. That's tool calling. It's tool calling on data on some iterative flow of data. In terms of production ready, I think typically what we're seeing is something that meets some set of tests, maybe some evaluations that you set up against it, something that, and then it depends on the use case. Obviously there's high precision use cases, low precision use cases. So normally production ready is meets some criteria. Hopefully you're testing, hopefully you have some evals against it. And the challenges normally the vertical I'm in, I'm a little bit biased, but observability evals are probably key pieces to making sure it's ready.
Yeah, so I guess there's maybe two ways to interpret the question, like what's an example of like a production AI agent? I think the very obvious examples are like Claude Code, Cursor agents, ChatGPT out an agent. I think one big difference between like ChatGPT that's not deep research and like Claude Code, for example, is one of them like runs kind of when you step away from the computer, whereas ChatGPT is generally primed to like, that's kind of a input, output, you have to be there in front of it. But I think, yeah, deep research, Claude Code, Cursor agent are all like very good examples of, obviously used in production, driving like incredible amounts of value. But yeah, I think production ready and like agents, it's basically the common things and the examples I gave is like kind of like long running, tool calling, and autonomous. And I actually think there aren't that many deployments and things like that out in the wild today. I think one example we're very proud of at Letta is this built reward deployment, where basically with built rewards, they're using Letta to make these recommendation agents, and they generate the recommendations on your phone, but they're kind of running in the cloud asynchronously, so very like Claude Code-esque, right? Or like Claude Code SDK-esque, like Cursor background agents. And I think that's an example. I mean, that's like millions of agents in production, right? So that's one example of like production ready. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't think there are that many examples, but the few are actually very, have very high usage, for sure.
Thank you. I think all of you guys are working with big enterprise or small enterprise customers to try to productionize AI or AI agents in their environment. But like McKinsey found out that even like with AI use exploding, some of the organizations don't see the impact. Like from you guys' experience working with those clients, what's the technical barriers from them to like preventing those customers to deploy agents?
Sure. Yeah, I think like the biggest barrier is I think there's actually not. I think for deploying workflows, there's a lot of stuff that exists today. I mean, it's like there's a whole zoo of different libraries you can use. They're all kind of like LangChain-esque, like Mastra, like a lot of these things. Like there's new ones from Agents SDK from OpenAI. I think a lot of those are kind of like production ready, and that they're definitely being used at companies at scale. I think the big difference between that and like Claude Code and the other stuff I was talking about earlier is those aren't really like long running processes that are living in a data center and are very like almost like durable workflows, right? And I think these sorts of kind of these systems that are like very long running, like consume a lot of compute, they touch a lot of API surfaces, it's very, very hard to actually deploy these in production. So I think actually the wall you hit when you like just from a software engineering perspective is it's a very, very like high wall to climb, right? So I think that's part of the problem. I think another problem is maybe more on like the why people aren't satisfied question. I think maybe one reason people aren't satisfied is a lot of the POCs they're trying, probably the natural question at the end of the POC is like, well, I could have done this with ChatGPT, right? Like, what am I doing with this like 100,000 deployment of this agent framework? But this looks exactly like what happens if I like talk to ChatGPT. I might as well just like buy a ChatGPT enterprise thing. So I think that's another thing that probably is happening a lot for a lot of these deployments.
Were you asking about ROI as well?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other question is like, as you're deploying the things, what's is this thing doing what I want? Is the ROI there? And I feel like we're in a stage where like maybe a lot of companies don't care. Just C-level initiative, get AI out. I am seeing some that they're starting to measure some projects being killed because they're not successful. Some projects not making it to production because they're not like doing good enough. It's not meeting either evals or tests in a way, and the team can't make it work. So I think we're in the upswing of AI, and we'll get to a spot where the stuff kind of matters a lot. I think still the hardest thing that people have right now is just making it work and work well enough that I put it out there. So the biggest challenge, and then some of the comments on the framework stuff. I think there was a period last year where I do think a lot of people got kind of burned with LangChain, like you fought the framework a lot to make the stuff work, and then ended up giving up the framework to kind of go just make it work. So I think there's I think the frameworks now. I think a lot of folks, I think Letta and some of these others, like I just think there's been a lot of investment to make this stuff better, easier, more tie in troubleshooting and observability into them instead of like having it be a black box. That's making it easier to get there. But the biggest challenge of all in all of this is just making it work well enough. And then yeah, I think I've seen some scenarios that are just awesome in terms of value to the customer, and then there's some that are just kind of just not there, and a lot of it's quality related.
Yeah, I would say on the non-technical side first, one of the barriers I see is that often teams are trying to do something rather than achieve something. And what I mean by that is, when we ask some of the customers we work with why they're building a remote MCP server, the answer ends up boiling down to we were told to by our bosses, or it's like it's an OKR in itself, like ship this thing versus affect this KPI by shipping this thing. And so I think often they're doing something, but it's not with a clear goal or end state in mind, other than just doing it for doing its sake. And then on the technical side, one of the things that we found is, and obviously a lot of this has to be is MCP related for where we sit, is that a lot of companies' APIs were not built to speak OAuth. And so if you think about that, there's not like, historically actually, most companies have not had to think about how to delegate access to another actor on behalf of their end user. Like obviously the biggest companies, like Google, you delegate your Google account all the time. You delegate your Google Calendar data to Calendly. You delegate your Gmail data to Superhuman as a different email client. And it makes sense that a lot of companies like Google have invested in how do we have great OAuth 2 compliance, how do we allow for different scopes and permissions, et cetera. A lot of the companies dealing with, they've never had to think about an actor on the user account except for the user themselves. And so then you have to think about just, it's a different identity model if you're going to bring delegation into mind. And so that's the biggest technical barrier. It's kind of boring. It's just, you're going back to the OAuth spec. You didn't think that you had to support this in the past, and now it actually matters quite a bit.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna actually double tap on that. Is I know all you guys are working with technology companies, and with the power of Cloud Code and Cursor, and with their strong engineering team, you guys probably face a lot of those build and buy conversations. And how do you advise your customers like what to own themselves and what to outsource to vendors?
Oh, sure, yeah. So yeah, I guess on the build or buy, I will say, I think maybe a year ago when I would talk to like enterprises that are building some sort of agent adjacent thing, a lot of them would say things like, oh no, we already built this at home, or like you're building this at home, or we're building memory, we built our own, I think I heard like the phrase, we built our own link chain like a million times, right? And I don't think I've heard it a single time in 2025. I think everyone kind of realized that like the time for like attempting to build stuff themselves was last year, and this year it's really all about buying. It's about kind of like validating like which of these frameworks, which of this infra, which API providers like actually can get us that value. So yeah, I think the companies that know what they're doing in 2025, if they are not an AI company, like their domain is in .ai or something, if they know what they're doing, they're buying, they're not building.
Yeah, I think I think in our vertical evaluation and observability, like last year, I think there were some doubts of like, should we take on a vendor? Should we do it? I think like nowadays, it's almost like you've got to have it, and there's so much depth I think in the solution that I don't get the build versus buy as much as just who of the competitive set fits the bill. I think I think the framework one is right on. Like I think the frameworks have come a long way in the last year, and so it's a lot about which one do I want to choose or standardize on. People still do like raw. I think I still see a lot of the tech first enterprises not choose a framework and kind of do it from scratch. So I still see some of that. I think that everyone's, I don't know why, but everyone seems to try to build an LLM gateway. I've seen that a lot across. Like maybe they think it's simple in the beginning, and then you end up on my LLM or something. But I don't know. So even that one, I feel like the people realize how much complexity is just even in that simple thing. Hey, I'm going to do a gateway. So I do think there's a lot of an amazing set of solutions out there, and I think lots of enterprises are buying now versus like trying to build. So.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I think the main thing I would add to that, because I think they covered it in depth, is I typically tell folks to buy for MVP and then revisit, like just push the decision node down the road and then decide whether you want to build after that. And honestly, a lot of people just want to go faster and they'll just continue the contract. But, yeah.
Great answer. Cool. So let's move on to the next question. So we're seeing like a clearly architecture shift from like a single agent to collaborative multi-agent system. So you guys are all in the multi-agent stack. So what's the most significant challenges this multi-agent era create for the developers?
I'll grab that. Like, I mean, I think it's hard enough to make one agent work. Like if you've been trying it, and so we have tools for visualizing multi-agent handoffs, all the stuff for debugging. But like, I think the reality is a lot of people are just trying to make the single one work and work well. And multi-agent is, I think we all, if you're sitting in the clouds, it sounds nice, but just reality is I don't see as many people doing it. Maybe Anthropic, they have some architectures, and that might be the group I think it's doing the best there. But yeah, the reality out there is lots of people are trying to make their individual things work.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I think the biggest technical challenge is like context management. I think basically, if you have like multiple agents running, how do you decide like what goes in the context of the different agents if they're all reading the same thing, right? I think humans, we function like a multi-agent society, but our version of like context management is actually incredibly complex, right? I kind of like ping someone on Slack, and then they kind of like context switch into like, they'll see the notification, they'll decide whether or not to like open it. They might open it and distract themselves, or they might decide, wait, hold on, I'm like in the zone right now, I'm gonna wait, and then I'll like open this later, right? I think if you're gonna do that with language models, you have to build all that yourself, right? That doesn't come for free in the language model. So I think even mimicking like the same semblance of human like multi-agent collaboration that we experience on a daily basis is incredibly hard with language models. And to give like a short anecdote, like so the original version of MemGPT, the way it worked is basically you have an agent that had access to tools like memory insert, memory rewrite or something, and kind of the aha moment if you like looked at the original paper back in the day is that like you might say something like my name is Charles, and then the agent would say, oh yeah, I realize this is a great opportunity to write to my memory, the user's name is Charles. But a very obvious limitation of that is, well, now you're waiting for this agent to do something quietly, and you probably won't see it, right? So you have like this latency problem. So very, very early on, like, okay, well, the obvious way to solve this problem is to multi-thread it, right? Because really, kind of the human should be able to say, or the agent should be able to say immediately, oh, cool, nice to meet you, Charles. But in the background, it should kick off like a memory job and update the memory. We have this paper that just came out a few months ago called Sync Time Compete, which basically implemented that. But the reason it was like a whole research paper and not just a PR that went up 1 month after the MemGPT release is because it's really damn hard. It's really, really hard to get it to work well in a way that doesn't like degrade the overall performance. And a lot of the reasons all just have to do with like the general reasons that like multi-agent systems or like multi-node processes or whatever is just hard in software.
Too much to add there.
Yeah, I had one more. I feel like there's been a lot of takedowns of Claude Code. If you haven't seen it, I've kind of lived my own internally. One of the you look at it, and actually Claude Code has two types of search, as two different types of tool calls, and one's an agent search. And so I think there's some ways in which you kind of can hand off a skill or encapsulate some function that this agent goes and does that's very specific. And so I think there's going to be, I think we're all going to figure out how to do this and do this stuff well. I think some teams are doing it better. I think the more controlled and focused versus this pie in the sky, oh, I'm going to have all these agents do these things. But this focus agent does search. I decide whether I use normal search or agent search. I think we'll all learn how to use these tools and to be better. But that's one example I've seen out there recently that kind of stood out to me.
Great, thank you. And since you didn't I'm gonna double tap on the authentication side. So for multi-agent systems, how do you establish trust and identity in this kind of environment? Like, what does OAuth for agents look like when agents need to interact with each other?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to scopes and permissions. So if you think about it, certain agents might actually have different scopes that you want to allow them to do. There may be agents that are more read heavy in terms of the access that you're providing, maybe ones that don't even need authentication at all. Maybe it's an agent that's handling something like search on the open web, and it's not taking any actions on behalf of the user, so you're not too worried about it. Then there might be another agent that's like at the end of a, let's think about some of the agentic commerce things that are coming up now, where you're actually thinking about, do I want to give the right to this agent to actually pull the trigger on a purchase? So like the scopes and permissions that you're delegating to those and the different ones and different states that you're managing around permissions are pretty critical. And then the other piece I'll just mention is that for any of the ones that you're going to have to do a sensitive write action, you need to build in a human in the loop approval, at least today if you do. Maybe that won't always be the case as agents get better and better, but we're currently still at the state where there's enough drift in terms of intent, where it's both necessary but also makes the consumer feel more in charge.
Cool, thank you. And then we move to the next topic, is like very exciting one, and which is MCP. And I don't know, it's like MCP is gaining attractions and like I never seen before. And it's explosive and also powerful standard. Does that when it emerge and also when it explode, does that change your company's strategy? Or does that commoditize one of the agent stack? Or even there's new opportunities create and you guys are seeing?
I think similar to Charles' original comment about you were an MCP hater to start. I wouldn't say I was an MCP hater, but I will say it was a divisive subject internally, MCP, and there was a large debate around whether it was going to be the standard that was going to have staying power, whether something else was going to emerge, and there still are some debates internally. At some point, I think just a very shrewd tech lead on the team was like, it honestly doesn't matter. It's all OAuth under the hood, at least from our perspective as an auth company. And so MCP is what we're building OAuth for. Remote MCP right now, it is possible you could have people centralized around something other than OAuth. I'd be shocked if that's the case, just because of how much kind of like standing on the shoulders of giants we're getting there. So from our perspective, it's probably been a different debate than different companies in terms of like how much they want to bet their roadmaps on MCP. For us, it's been clear that it is the leader, and the fact that OpenAI also is supporting it now. Though I will say they have a pretty funky implementation if you've tried to set up remote MCP servers. Yeah, it's very funky, so my hope is they actually truly adhere to the spec in the future. But overall, I would say it's the best hope we have right now of standardization. We'll check in 6 months or 12 months if that's the case. We're just trying to make decisions that will be, I guess, long-standing, even if MCP disappears.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it changes, I don't, like our business model, obviously, we've got to trace and track and support analysis of people using MCP. I've seen like little interesting things come up where people want to run evals on responses from MCP to make sure it's like secure, there's not like something suspicious about the response. So there's little features that we're pushed to add that seem like unique to the interface. But I think, but for us, yeah, it's probably it's probably a boon, not a big change.
Yeah, so I think I'll explain I was an MCP hater story, and that'll like basically the answer. But I guess for context, so the way Letta works, just to make it clear, it's very different from most agent frameworks because you basically run an agent server. And you have to run the server, but as long as you're running the server somewhere in the cloud, on your own machine, wherever, or in Letta Cloud, then your agents are available and like alive. They're ready to be interacted with. Whereas most agent frameworks, you kind of like write code and there's no server anywhere. It's you and OpenAI. It's you and Anthropic. And the agent is kind of existing when your code is running, right? So yeah, to preface, like Letta, you have to deploy a server. But a very big issue that we faced with Letta early on is, well, if you're deploying a server and you have many users and many agents, and now an agent wants to run a tool, it's like, okay, well, this is a nightmare, right? Like, you can't just run the tool on the server process because that's unprivileged, and one agent could run like, drop Bobby tables, and like the entire thing goes down. But you can also like sandbox it, but then like sandboxing at the time, especially, was a complete like pain in the ass. Like, what vendor are you going to use? All of them don't have like a reliability for this sort of thing. So we were actually considering like, well, probably the best way to do this is we're an agent service. We don't want to handle tools. That's like outside of our scope. It makes it very hard for us to do our job properly. We want to communicate with tool servers. And the obvious way to do tool servers is basically, tools are all speaking JSON schemas in LLM land. Well, you can like get the tool server, like HTTP get, and ask, hey, what tools do you have? And you can post the tool server and say, like, hey, please run this tool. It's like a very simple REST API, a get and a post. And then around the same time, in November, like MCP comes out, and the first time we see it, I think it kind of went viral more like early this year. And we're looking at this and we're like what on earth have they done? Like, this is like the worst version of tool server, because it's like, instead of a get and a post, it's like some like unholy networking stuff I've never seen as just a computer science PhD student. And it looked like way overcomplicated, and I think we still think it's like overcomplicated in many ways, but maybe not. If you think of auth, things get very complicated with auth. So at the time, I was like very much kind of a hater. I was like, okay, it's really annoying that everyone is doing this thing that is way overcomplicated when all we needed was a REST API that's like get tools and post tool. I think the thing that changed our mind is really about the thing I talked about earlier on, is the tool quality, right? I think the thing we saw happen is like everyone got excited about MCP, especially earlier this year when it had its like second resurgence, and then all the companies started making their own MCP servers, like the Zapier MCP server, the Linear one. And the engineers that wrote the servers, generally, they did a very, very good job to make the servers good. And it immediately became, like, for us, when we explained to users, let's say a user asked us, oh, hey, I want to connect the Letta agent to Zapier. Our answer used to be, okay, well, here's a code snippet for like Python tool that imports Zapier API, you do this, this, and this. And now the answer is definitively use the Zapier MCP server, because you're not going to have to code anything. It's going to kind of generally stay up to date with your own REST API, the Python SDK, and it just works. I feel like it's three words you want to hear, like it just works. That's definitely not the case for all the MCP servers. There's a lot of like garbage ones out there. There's a lot of like middleware MCP servers, but like at least the native ones that are made by companies with good engineers, they're becoming very, very good. And they're starting to support all the great things like OAuth, where like you can OAuth into the linear MCP one, and now you have a local agent that like can close and open tickets or do whatever you want. So I think, yeah, that was the transition from like hater to maybe not lover, but endorser of MCP. And I think it will. I think MCP is going to. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna share my take. I think like MCP or agents protocols should probably be included in the next version of HTTP. That's my hot take. I don't know. Like, let's see how it goes. But let's move to the last sections of my question. You're all great founders, right? So if you weren't building your current company, so what is the biggest guide in today's infrastructure, AI infrastructure stack, and that you would building a company to solve? Anyone want to do it first?
Please. Are you thinking? Just thinking?
I can jump in.
No,
Yeah. So this is like adjacent to us, and we do some things here, but it's not our sole focus, and it's definitely not where like the vast majority of our engineering resources go. A lot of folks probably saw or you might have seen the fight that Cloudflare had with Perplexity earlier this week around Perplexity disguising their traffic so that they could fetch data from sites. Cloudflare did some reverse engineering of it, found that when they were hitting Cloudflare block, they were effectively changing their ASNs, IP addresses. They're just effectively doing things to kind of circumvent some of those blocks. And then the Cloudflare CEO and Vercel CEO got into a little bit of a fight about what should be the role of kind of these internet gateways and toll gates in terms of restricting AI access to content or enabling it. And overall, I think it's a pretty interesting philosophical debate that's happening there about where we want to invest right now, just generally. But I think what I find very technologically interesting is there's so much that still needs to be done at the level of like actually having a true truth lie detector of whether the traffic is coming. Like we already have not really solved bot traffic pre-AI agents. Like if you look at the amount of bot traffic and bad bots on the internet, it continues to kind of explode, and you have tons of different bot management softwares. Laughs tried to be a solution to a degree. Now you have really complex CAPTCHAs, which are being being broken effectively by vision models. You have some TLS fingerprinting. JA3 is pretty much broken at this point if you're actually trying to use it for bot detection. So I will say we do some things in this area, but I think if I had to go like completely dedicated to something, it'd be truly building what is the final Turing test for traffic on the web in a post-AI and post-agent world where all the Turing tests are kind of getting broken. And we weren't really good beforehand at having Turing tests with CAPTCHA and things like that.
I would say one of the big challenges in making this stuff work is having call it synthetic data, or having simulation environments where you can run the stuff and test and test against. So I think it's a huge missing area in the space is being able to maybe use my production data to generate synthetic data that mimics something, and you just can't. The spread of situations that the agents can get into makes it really hard to test and understand. Like I see so much in production that just you didn't think about. You think about this language, and you think about this hack, and you think about someone doing this. So a little bit of that area is probably I think right for opportunity.
Yeah, so if I wasn't working on Letta, I think I'd probably be doing something related to like open source model training, or basically like infrastructure and tooling around open source models, because I do think it's a shame that like the best open weights models today. I think now that the OpenAI one has had 24 hours to settle, I think we can still definitively say the best ones are coming out of China, and I think it's a shame that America, where it has basically the best AI research universities in the world, is just not producing any particularly exceptional open weights models. And I don't think that's necessarily like a lack of like people or like vision. I think it's a lack of I think it's just like a lack of like competition in the space, and then also just I guess maybe reverse my answer. There is a lack of people. I think just like not enough like, good, talented people are working on open source. I think there's a lot of like reasons for that, but yeah, I think if you throw more people at the problem, I think we could definitely reach like best in the world open-based models created in the U.S. And yeah, that's definitely achievable. Just more people.